Thank you so much, Samba, for that beautiful introduction. I want to take a few moments to acknowledge the organizers of this, Nicole, Samba, of course, Eureka. We've had some technical difficulties, but you know what? You guys have stayed positive, you guys have stayed focused, and ultimately your end game is to make sure you bring value. And as I sat through listening to all the presentations, I had a huge amount of appreciation for that amount of focus that you have towards bringing this. I also want to thank the Anakazi. I mean, this is a great forum. We're going through tough times in our lives today. We've been rocked really hard. I mean, you think about our background from being able to connect with our families, see our moms and dads, and all that has just been undermined, and we feel like the floor has been taken off of us. So I'm going to share, I have one focus today, and it's to share with you some skills as it pertains to investing in real estate. And Nicole, if you would share the presentation, I'll wait until that pulls up. So I have one goal, and like I mentioned, one goal only, and that is to give you ultimately the confidence to be able to invest in real estate. I'm going to give you 3 secrets. Invest in real estate part-time while you maintain a full-time job. And Nicole, you can jump over to the next slide. So one of the mantras that I always talk about is being able to turn the tables. As I look at my own life, I've had very lackluster results when I sat back and didn't really take upon, driving behavior. I've had average results when I listened and sort of took advice of others and hoped and expected results by just following others. But I had unbelievable results when I took it upon myself and I turned tables around and I said, I am going to be a leader. I am going to take this upon myself. I'm going to take my financial future upon myself. A quick story. I was actually growing up, for many of you that don't know, I actually grew up in Zambia. I was from Luanshya, Zambia. I pretty much was there from the age of a couple of months old. And I was in Zambia until the late 80s. So actually, Eureka and I are childhood friends. We've known each other for many, many years, and we just met after 33 years in Manhattan. And interestingly, it was great just for us to see how close that bond is. But as a child, and I don't know if Eureka will remember this, but I was extremely shy. And I didn't really have that ability to turn tables and push myself. I accepted what was given up onto me. And so because of that, I didn't really view myself as a successful person until later on in life when I had a few little opportunities to exercise my power. And I looked back and said, wow, I look at my life today and I go, because I took it upon myself to take action is how I was able to draw results. If you could go over to the next slide. So this is how I want to empower you with, I don't want you to be the guy who's sitting behind the table with your hands down saying, oh, I'm just going to accept life as it is. I want you to drive and get the results of life that you want. This is my son, and he's 17 years old. He's about to be 17 years old, and he has a focus, an ultimate focus, to own a multi-family building or own an apartment building. And my thoughts are, if he can own an apartment building at the age of 17, how do you think that is going to change the course of his life? Of course, we know that it's going to be positive. If I look back at my life and I say, hey, if I was 30 years old and I had bought a property when I was in my teenage years and I owned that property outright today, think about the financial impact that would have to me as an individual. So this is what ultimately my goal is. I want to give you a framework in the short 10 minutes that I have to be able to drive results and invest in real estate as a part-time venture. So if you could advance over to the next slide, Nicole. So we're going to cover 3 areas. The 3 areas are mainly the 3 pain points that many clients that I have seen. I have represented over 1,000 clients in my property management business. I myself made each and every one of these mistakes that you see. And they're not really mistakes, but they're life lessons. These are challenges and pain points that anyone wanting to get into real estate has at some point down in their career. The first one being, I want to invest in real estate, but I do not know what to buy. And I'll tell you why they don't know what to buy. If you'd advance over to the next slide, Nicole. They don't know what to buy because they trust in others and they're putting their emphasis on their success onto other people. So the traditional buying approach of anyone wanting to get into real estate, including myself in the early days, is you'll pick up the phone and you'll say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Real Estate Agent, will you please help me find a building? What happens is that real estate agent will drive you all around God's green earth looking for a building, wasting your time as you're working full time. Remember, the mantra here is that we want to create wealth and create income while we're working full time. Investing in real estate as a path towards creating wealth. So that real estate agent is going to drive us all over God's green earth, to a certain extent wasting our time, showing us properties that don't make sense. And here's the biggest thing, showing us properties that don't make sense for us to buy, but it makes sense for the real estate agent to sell to you, because ultimately they will get the commission by selling a property that does not work for your needs. You go through the offer reject phase. You make several offers, and this is a critical point. You will make offers on buildings based on the selling price. That is a critical issue, and it's a philosophical issue that I have, is sellers of a building or a property or an investment grade property will place a price, and people that are looking to buy it base their offers on the seller's asking price, instead of basing their offer from a return on investment perspective. So it is really important to understand that that's how we should be basing our offers, because ultimately we're investing in real estate as a form of creating wealth for ourselves. So you go through the offer reject process, you're still wasting time, you forget that you have to have insurance, you forget that you have to have closing, you forget that you have to have funds laid out and ready in order to be able to close on the property. And so what I'm trying to say here is there's a lot of confusion, and because people don't know what to buy and they don't know how to base their offers, they waste so much time. And then what happens is they get sick of the process and they ultimately don't end up buying anything. And it's a risky thing, and it's a risky statement not to take action, because inaction sometimes is worse than action. What happens is with inaction, if we don't take action and we don't live the life that we want, we look back and we have regrets. And my intention is not to have any regrets in life, because we have one shot at this. So if there's anything that I say is a write me downer, guys, it is, you know what, you have one shot at life, have no regrets, make sure all those wheels are turning. And Nicole, if you would turn the slide, I would appreciate it. So how do we overcome that? I have placed here the only formulas, the only real estate formulas that you will ever need. I'm not going to go over this, but I will make this presentation available to anyone that needs this. Plus, I will make sure that there are resources if you want to contact me and get access to these formulas. But these formulas are formulas that I have developed, that I have used over 15 years of managing real estate for thousands of clients, and I have used myself every time I purchase a building. And these formulas are ways that you can evaluate how good a real estate investment is, how bad a real estate investment could be, but also how to base your offers. So in other words, if you have a property that's priced by the seller at X, you have the ability with these formulas to look at that and say, hey, this price does not make sense. However, based on a return on investment, here's what number makes sense. It also helps you negotiate with a bank. There's a formula in there known as DSCR, debt service coverage ratio. And this is how a bank is going to look at you as they extend financing for you to be able to buy a piece of real estate. So that's the first one, is don't get caught up in the confusion of people driving your bus and telling you how to do things, but make sure that you have these real estate formulas so that you ultimately are driving the bus. Nicole, if we could advance over to the next slide. The second issue that we have with people, or the second pain point that people have, including myself, is probably one of the most widespread, and that is, I don't have enough money to buy real estate. Francis, what you're saying is all great, but ultimately, I don't have enough money to buy real estate, and if I don't have money, then how am I going to buy real estate? I'm going to give you three options as far as how to buy real estate. I have done each and every one of them from the days that I didn't have even a penny to my name to the environment that I have now where I can self-fund myself. So the first is traditional financing. This is traditional bank financing. In today's environment, traditional bank financing with COVID is a little bit tight, so it is hard to get traditional financing. Now, one of the components of traditional financing is that you need to have, for real estate, you need to have anywhere between 20 and 25% of the purchase price ready in your bank to be able to put down as a down payment, because the bank wants your skin in the game. They want to make sure that you're vested and you have a financial impact and financial skin in the game on that real estate asset. So you need to have 25% down. The second option is what's called seller held back financing. Many people don't know this, but this is one of the best kept secrets, is that when there is a building that's been owned by the same owner for a long period of time, they have, in most cases, they have a lot of equity in that building. They have a huge equity stake. And it behooves that owner to sell that building outright, because by selling that building outright, that seller will be impacted very negatively with the tax implications. I myself have gone through that recently. I've sold a building and I neglected to realize the fact that I should have done seller held back financing, and I had to suffer the consequences of huge tax consequences for that. So if you can find owners that have held on to properties for a long period of time, you're able to do what's called seller held back financing. In other words, the seller allows you to get into that real estate asset with less money in, because they are taking a risk position. The third is the example that we have here, and that is called private financing. Private financing is actually an area that I did not even know existed until I utilized it first. And I remember the first time I used private financing, I was so fearful of the concept of private financing, because I always had this notion that, you know, private money is also known as hard money, and if I don't pay my hard money lender, they're going to come with a baseball bat and they're going to break my knees. And that might be the case, but it depends on how you negotiate. Again, we're in the driver's seat, and if there's anything I can give you from this presentation is I want you to always be in the driver's seat. So here is an example of a building. I just want to give you a quick run through on this example. I purchased a building at $60,000, a distressed piece of real estate here in the US at $60,000. I have, because again I'm in the driver's seat, I have visited that property and I have recognized that that property needs about $40,000 worth of rehabilitation or improvements. So my total out of cost that I need in order to take on this project is $100,000. And I have deemed that it's going to take me 6 months to complete this job. If you have a private money lender, and in fact, in this case, this is a real example with fictitious numbers, but a real example of a private money lender that I work with in New York. that requires only a 10% entry into the market. So in other words, they would extend me 6,000 of my original acquisition price, and they will pay for all of the rehab costs. Now, people get so scared about private money, but they don't know that this exists out there. So really, I am getting 94,000 paid for me to invest in a real estate asset. And we get so hung up on how much I'm going to pay that investor. But you have to look at it from the standpoint of the investor or the person who's extending, the private money lender. He or she is taking on that risk position. And so coming into a deal with 6,000 and having short-term borrowing costs is no problem at all. And that's something that, again, I want you to start thinking about, and thinking about how we can shift our mindsets into these kind of environments. And Nicole, if you would shift over to the next slide. The third pain point that people have and are fearful about real estate is, hey, so Francis, you've walked me through, I don't know what to buy, and you helped me with a formula. Okay, I don't know what to buy. Francis has said, hey, why don't we analyze the building? We've got all the formulas, and now we know what to buy. The second pain point was, well, now I know what to buy, I just don't have enough money to buy it. Well, we know the options that are out there, right? There's private money, there's traditional financing, or there's seller held back financing. The third pain point is, okay, Francis, I own the building now and I work full time, but I don't know how to take care of this. I don't want to deal with tenants. I don't want to make repairs. That is called property management. This is the industry I was in. I started a property management company, ran the business for 15 years, and I have just exited after selling the business in 2019. And I broke that business, the core of that business, into 5 components. The components are, starting from left to right, resident relations, also known as how do I take care of my tenants? How do I ensure harmony in the building? How do I take care of my ultimate clients? Number 2, financial. Very simply is, if you own a building, there's going to be expenses. You're going to need to learn to pay the water bill, the sewer bill, and take care of any contractors that are doing work. The third is legal. When you own real estate, you have to know what the local ordinances, whether it's the United States or it's Zambia, there are local ordinances that govern how that building, if it's a rental building, is going to operate. Learn those. The next is the lifeblood. I call it the lifeblood of the building is leasing. Making sure that there's leasing activity and there's apartments are filled, because that's how you're making your money. And then finally, it's maintenance. Do you have the infrastructure to take care of maintenance at the building? So, do you need a company for that? Again, no you don't, right? This is where I'm saying drive your own bus, turn the tables, let's rise up and have confidence within ourselves. Just learn those 5 aspects of it and you can self-manage a building. And Nicole, if you would advance over to the next slide. And in closing, you know, I've spoken of this concept of turning tables and rising up, right? I say it like this, I sort of want to close with this. Instead of ask, why not tell? Again, instead of ask, why not tell? Instead of wish, why not do? Again, instead of wish, I wish I had this, why not just do it? And finally, instead of watching other people succeed, why don't we rise up and reap the benefits of taking action? I hope this was of value for you guys. Nicole, if you would advance over to the next slide. Like I said, there was only so much time that I had to be able to share, this, I'm so passionate about the industry that I'm in. I only had a fixed amount of time, but feel free to reach out to me. I've given you my handles over there on Instagram. I am #HowMuchWillIMake. The next item there, or the next icon there, is actually called Linktree. You can access that Linktree through my Instagram, and if you go in there, there's a section that says free access to real estate investing videos. It goes over those formulas in great amount of detail, so feel free to go through that, and of course connect with me on LinkedIn at Francis Fernando. I appreciate the time. Sure. So I'll take the first one. As I look back at my career, my first building that I bought was a single family home. And I always share, it was a condo, very much like a single family home, basically a standalone. And that asset does very well for me today. I still own it. I bought it over 20 years ago, and I have paid it off. So I have a traditional side of me that I paid that off. As I look back, I always go, wow, what if I bought 2 units or 3 units, right? Economies of scale. So my question to, my sort of response back to the individual who asked the question is, I highly recommend a duplex or a triplex. But then I also will challenge you to say, well, why stay at a twoplex or a threeplex? Ultimately, the investments that did really, really well for me were the 6 to 8 to 12 unit apartment buildings, because the larger you go, as long as you have the mechanisms for property management, the larger you go, the incremental amount of money that you need to put down is really not that much more. Right? You know, it's sort of the BJ's concept, right? You buy it in bulk, you're going to get that much of a return on investment. But you know what? I highly encourage a duplex, triplex, even a single family home. Absolutely. And Samba, what was the second question? Okay, so again, building or buying, and this is no matter if it's Zambia or this is global, right? Because numbers are global. It all depends on your return on investment. Right? So if your capital outlay to build is that much less, and you're getting a newer product, right, which is going to have less on your profit and loss, right? There's the capital outlay, but there's also the maintenance cost to maintain that. When you build, the building is brand new, so your capital outlay may be high, but your maintenance costs are going to be low. So if the construction cost, if you're in an environment where construction costs are low, I say build. Right? In the US, depending on the region that you're at, building, and because labor is so expensive and material and resources are so expensive, sometimes it makes sense, depending on where you are, to buy existing and then rehabilitate the property. So that is so I have a traditional side of me, or a conservative side, and then I have an aggressive side. So I hate the answer, it depends, but I'm going to start off by saying it depends. If you're starting off in your career, I would say, yes, buy one property, make sure that it's stable. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid off, but make sure that it's stable. So you have a stable footing before you take that next step, because I've seen so many real estate investors bring their properties to me to have managed, and then before you know it, they've lost focus on taking care of that asset and they're moving on to the next. Right? And I always say, hey, hold on, how about this one? You need to take care of this and the tenants, and they forget about that basic property management principles. Take care of what you have, right, before you leap on. I mean, it's no different than having kids, right? I mean, you say you can have multiple kids at a time, but ultimately you have one kid, you got to take care of that child before you move on, and you have to have the resources to be able to take care of it. A property is no different than a child. It needs care, and it will give you a great return on investment if it's taken care of. Thank you, Samba. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Eureka. Appreciate it. Take care.